Job Skills Program Application Webinar for fiscal year 2026. I'm Carolyn McKinnon. I'm staff to the State Board and will facilitate this webinar today. Let's go around and do introductions of our other staff. Vicki, welcome.
Thank you, Carolyn. Good morning, everybody. I'm Vicky Chungtiko, your interim program administrator, and with Carolyn and Carrie here, we'll give you the information you need to get your JSP proposal started.
Carrie, welcome.
Hi there, I'm Carrie Kaufman. I am the program coordinator for the State Board. I'm available to answer any questions about working on and submitting your application in OGMS.
Thanks, Carrie and Vicki. Okay, we'll get going. Bear with me, I need to move a window. Oh, sorry. Okay, all right. So about this webinar is being recorded. If you join late, it will be available on our website later today. And the purpose of the webinar is to discuss the application process for the Job Skills Program. It's not a forum to vet your proposal ideas, and we do welcome questions. You can post questions into the chat. We'll monitor the chat. And you can also voice your questions at the end of the webinar. That said, oh, I'm sorry, Vicki, is the chat function off?
It is off. If they don't mind putting their questions in the Q&A, that would be great. Yeah.
Please use the Q&A feature to post your questions. Here's how we handle questions. If it's a really simple, practical answer that we can deliver online, we will answer that question today. But for the most part, what we do in this webinar is capture your questions and we incorporate them into our Q&A document that we will post later today onto the Job Skills website, and we keep updating that Q&A throughout the application period through the Monday right before the application is due. So we do encourage you to check back on the web page frequently to see updates to the Q&A. All of the program resources are available on the Job Skills Program website. The website link is shown in the slide here, and you can also use the search bar on the State Board's webpage to find it. Okay, here's what we'll cover today. We're going to provide you a brief overview of the Job Skills Program FY or fiscal year 2026 guidelines, including the purpose of the funds, funding priorities, who may apply, funding and budget details. Then we'll provide an overview of application information and grant resources, college and business accountability requirements, and grant and project timelines. These are important dates that you'll need to keep track throughout the grant process. Okay, let's jump into the purpose of the Job Skills Program funding. And so in part one of this purpose of funds, each application must meet at least one of the following purposes. The Job Skills Program is to provide short-term training, which has been designated for specific industries, provide training for prospective employees before a new business operation opens or when existing industry expands, includes training or retraining for workers who are already employed to avoid dislocation or where upgrading of existing employees' skills would create new vacancies for unemployed people, and serves an area with high concentrations of economically disadvantaged persons and high unemployment. I want to mention that these priorities and purposes are established in Washington State statute under the creation of the program. Okay, purpose of the funds, part two. The Job Skills Program is intended to also promote the growth of industry clusters, serve an area where there is a shortage of skilled labor to meet job demands, promote the location of new industry or new employers in an area that's been affected by economic dislocation, and projects must align to the college system's mission, vision, and values. So again, I'll repeat the two lists of purposes that I just read. Your job skills projects must meet one or more of those criteria. Okay, our funding priorities. There are a number of priorities for this program, multiple concurrent priorities that the legislature and the state board have set forth for this program. And you have, we have a customer advisory committee that meets on a quarterly basis, and that advisory committee is also established in state statute. They provide us insights and input into setting policies for this program and setting forth priorities. So the priorities that increase the review committee's ranking of each project that they review, including training that provides college credit or leads to an industry recognized credential, proposals from firms in strategic industry clusters that are identified by the state or local area. There will be, I think we have a question in our Q&A that will show up in the next couple of days that will address a question about that. Proposals from firms that are certified as minority and women-owned business enterprises or veteran-owned businesses. Proposals that focus on coordination with other industry cluster-based programs or initiatives, including but not limited to things like industry skill panels, centers of excellence, innovation partnership zones, state-supported cluster growth grants, or cluster accelerator grants is sometimes what they're called, and local cluster-based economic development initiatives. Additional priorities include proposals from consortia of educational institutions or consortia of employers, so a group of employers that come together with a college to apply for a job skills grant would be an example of a consortia. Proposals geared at increasing capacity for education institutions that then can be made available to industry and trainees beyond the grant recipients. And proposals showing a business cash contribution to the project budget. Again, here's an example of where we'll have a Q&A that addresses that point in a bit more detail. Okay, who is eligible to apply for a job skills program grant? This is about the training institutions that are eligible to apply. The educational institutions that are eligible must be a public secondary or post-secondary institution, an independent institution, like an independent college or university, or a licensed private career school or college within Washington State, which is authorized by law to provide a program of skill training or education beyond the secondary level. That is language straight out of our state statute. What that means is licensed private career schools and colleges are eligible. There are a little bit more detail that unpack exactly the types of institutions that are eligible to apply on this slide, and those include, as I mentioned, community and technical colleges, universities with degree granting authority, apprenticeship trusts, and private, nonprofit, non-sectarian educational institutions, and licensed private career schools. Okay, let's look at business eligibility. So colleges partner with businesses to apply for a job skills grant, and the participating businesses must be a private corporation, institution, firm, person or group, or association that generates commerce, trade, manufacturing, or the provision of services within Washington. So in other words, these are private enterprises that are in business and are profit seeking. Now, a a public or nonprofit hospital licensed by the Department of Health is also eligible. I'd like to make a note about nonprofit organizations. Nonprofit organizations that meet the description under eligible business partners are eligible. So an eligible nonprofit organization must be generating commerce in the state of Washington. Generating commerce is defined as producing revenue or generating goods by generating goods and services. So proposals from nonprofit entities must be focused on delivering skills training to the employees of the nonprofit organization. In other words, the Job Skills Program does not fund training for social services clients of a nonprofit organization. Importantly, we'll note that government and municipal agencies, including tribal governments, are not eligible as businesses to apply for the Job Skills Grant. That being said, tribal enterprises such as casinos would be eligible because they are generating commerce. Okay, what slide number are we on? This is still me. Okay, funding. So for fiscal year 26, we have that fiscal year runs from July 1, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. That's the state fiscal year. And importantly, we want you to know that job skill grants and the funding associated with them can never be extended beyond the June 30th end of the fiscal year. That's not a policy the state board can change. We have $7.725 million of grant funding available for fiscal year 2026. We have structured that, we make that available in 3 application rounds. However, if we award all of the funds in the first round, then there will not be subsequent application rounds. As I mentioned, this is entirely state funded and administered by the state board. We do have maximums for individual grants. A single company that applies for a job skill grant in partnership with an eligible education institution, they cannot have a grant that exceeds $600,000. Likewise, consortia proposals are also maxed out at $600,000. So if you have a group of businesses getting together to do a single project, the maximum would be $600,000. And as I mentioned, pending funding availability, we do hold quarterly application rounds for this grant. Okay, funding part 2. This is a matching grant set forth in state statute. It must be a dollar-for-dollar matching grant where the college and the business partner are responsible for that match. Dollar for dollar, every dollar that the state puts in, the business partner must match. We conduct funding surveys twice each year in October and February. What is a funding survey? It is simply our way as staff to touch base with our grantees to ask, how's your grant project going? Are you progressing and reaching the milestones as planned? And do you expect to have any unspent funds? For example, a grant project, the business client may decide one of the courses that was planned is not, after all, going to be a good match for their schedule, and they may want to remove that from the plan. If that's the case, then you would explain to us that the grant could be reduced by a dollar amount associated with that one course, and we will adjust your funding accordingly. It's very essential that you respond to our funding surveys in October and February. Now, once we review and approve a job skills grant application, we will notify you of the award, and the budget will be sent through the online budget and invoicing system. Carrie, am I doing your part?
No, I'm next.
Okay, cool. I'll keep going. And funds are accessed by invoicing the state board for expenses as they are incurred. What that means, this is a grant, which is different from an allocation. Grants, you will invoice us through our online budget invoicing system, and you will be reimbursed. We do reserve the right to decline funding grants that are not in alignment with the mission, vision, and values of the public, community, and technical college system. Okay, application information and grant resources. Carrie, is this you?
It is. Okay, so we'll go to the next page. Okay, so you'll apply for this funding, excuse me, in OGMS, which is our online grant management system. If you don't have an account, you'll need to contact your college's OGMS security contact. They will create you an account. SBCTC staff cannot create accounts for college faculty and staff. The list of security contacts is listed in the slide, and we'll make the PowerPoint available after the presentation. If you've forgotten your username and password, you can also contact your security contact or your username. They probably won't have your password, but you can use the Retrieve My Password feature on the login screen. You'll also need to reach out to your security contact to access the 2025-26 job skills application. Unfortunately, permissions from prior year do not follow you to the new fiscal year. Once you have access to the fiscal year 26 application, you would create a new application under the available grant section of OGMS. After you log in, you'll see a list of grant applications you have access to towards the top of a screen. A little further down, you'll see available grants that you can create a new application for, and it may be the only application you see. You only want to go through this process once. After you create that application will be in the FY26 screen of OGMS. So before July of 2025, it'll automatically pop up fiscal year 25. So you'll need to go down and select 26 to show the applications for FY26. It also, as a reminder, OGMS has a security feature where after 20 minutes of inactivity, you'll get logged out. Only clicking the save button and clicking from one screen to another counts as activity. Unfortunately, typing doesn't count, neither does clicking checkboxes or radio buttons. Next slide, please. Also in your application, you'll see a link off to the right of your screen. This is the grant info section of the application and where you'll find program guideline documents. Please visit that link and read through the documents to get the scoop on what's allowed in this grant who to contact, for information, timeline, deadlines, etc. Clicking on this grant info tab opens another screen. So to get back to your application, you'll need to close the windows depending on your what window you're working from. Next slide. So now that we've gone over logging in to OGMS and finding the application, we're kind of going to go over the sections of the application itself. The first section is the applicant info screen. This is where you'll enter your contact information. Both contacted listed here will get the emails from OGMS. Please be sure that the person listed first is the person who will be the main grant contact all year long should the grant get funded. It's entirely possible that your college will require you to put someone from the grants office in either the primary or secondary contact field. Please check in with them about this. And you also want to be very careful when entering your email address. If you have a typo, you won't get the automatic emails from OGMS. These are emails that tell you if your application has been returned and needs modifications and other pertinent things. You should add OGMS to your contact list as a safe sender so you can receive our notifications. Next slide, please. So the assurance document is located in the Assurances tab. This is an important step. This will need to be signed and attached to the application to be recognized as complete. Please do not skip this step. This will need to be uploaded as an attachment and under the attachments section, which is another tab towards the right of the application. When you select the attachments tab, you'll simply click the choose file button and find the document you wish to upload. Then you'll click the upload attachment button. If you choose the wrong file, you can click the reset button to remove your file. You can't delete files once they've been uploaded, but don't worry. We'll simply consider the most recently uploaded file as a file you intended to upload, or you can send us an email and let us know which file you mean for us to use. Next slide, please. With regards to required attachments, along with the Assurances tab, we have the Project Outcomes and Measures document, which was previously a separate document and is now integrated into the Trainee Match Course and Outcome Information worksheet. Moving forward, you'll no longer need to submit a separate outcomes page. Instead, for your application, please ensure that you complete the Outcomes tab within the worksheet and submit the entire file. Next slide, please. Before I send this back over to Carolyn, let's go over the budget details for this application. The funding opportunity has 6 budget categories. For accounting, tracking, and reporting purposes, it's critical that items are budgeted on the correct budget lines and in the correct budget cells. The 6 categories are salary and wages, employee benefits, goods and services, building rental and utilizations, travel, and contracts. There are also 3 budget activities as follows. We have project development, instructional, and administration. Costs on the administration lines may not exceed 20% of the grant total. Costs on the project development and administrative lines combined should not exceed 25% of the total budget. Proposed expenditures must be about allowable use of state funds per WAC 292. The project development lines should include allowable expenses in support of your proposed project. These would include program development tasks, such as arranging the training, developing training plan and schedule, project coordination, and completing final project report. The instructional line should account for the personnel and supporting expenses for direct instruction. The administration lines are where you can budget for administrative expenses related to your program. These would include administrative requirements for this funding opportunity, like completing application materials, monitoring budgets, student coding, and associated expenses. Please refer to the JSP guidelines for expanded category and activity descriptions and some examples. All cash contribution used as a grant match must be included in the budget narrative. Back over to you, Carolyn.
Thank you, Carrie. All right, let's talk about applying as a consortium. So I've mentioned before this idea of a consortium. It is entirely allowable for a group of businesses to be together in partnership with an educational institution to apply for a job skills grant. If applying for a job skills grant as a consortium, let me get on my notes, then the following elements must be completed. There needs to be a supplemental descriptive information for each of the participating businesses. The budget information completed in OGMS must represent the totals for the entire consortium. And then the trainee, course, wage, and match for each business, you must also include complete it for each individual business and then include a combined summary for the entire project. I want to mention that in OGMS, in application item 1P, like Paul, that's where multiple businesses as a consortium, where you enter that information. So if you answer yes to 1P, then it will open items 1D like David through 1N like Nancy for you to enter each additional business. And if you have any issues with that, reach out to program staff and we can help explain that for you. Okay, we're going to talk about minimum requirements and evaluation criteria. In the guidelines, section 6, or in the application, section 6 is an application checklist that you can use. We encourage you to check that frequently before you submit. Incomplete proposals will not be reviewed, so please do double check that you have all of your sections in OGMS completed and your required uploads, like the assurances. Now, the review committee will represent individuals from business, labor, and workforce development professionals. This is a standing subcommittee of our Workforce Training Customer Advisory Committee that's established in statute, and they will review all of the applications as a full round, and then they make recommendations to the state board leadership. State board staff, program staff like myself and Vicki, carry the JSP subcommittee's review recommendations and staff notes to state board leadership for final review and approvals. Okay, minimum requirements and evaluation criteria part 2. Pardon me. So here in the application, we want you to pay particular attention to the descriptions of major products and markets. This is question 1L, like Larry. This should give reviewers a solid understanding of what the business actually does. It's helpful to include details like how long the company has been in operation, whether it's a leader in its field, and any other relevant industry context that you can provide. Above all, make sure that the core business activities are clear. Reviewers need to understand the industry and the business type and the type of products that they're producing to assess funding eligibility and understand how and whether it is a contributor to a local or regional industry cluster, for example, that kind of thing. Next, in your project overview, you'll find 2 narrative sections. 2A, like Albert, is a needs analysis, and 2B, like Bob, is the purpose of the project. Let's start with the needs analysis. This is where you're going to explain how you identified the training needs for the business. Sometimes applicants will confuse this with the purpose section, but it's really important to separate the two. In 2B, the purpose of the project, you're describing how your training plan will address the needs that you just identified. Your narrative should align with the intent and priorities of the program, and you had selected those previously in your application. For example, if your project focuses on employee upskilling, retraining, retention, or layoff prevention, be sure to clearly explain that and how it will do that. Also, if your project includes industry recognized credentials, make sure those are specifically identified. Reviewers pay close attention to things like that. Finally, don't forget to include whether the business is minority, women, or veteran owned. This is important context for reviewers. Okay, we're going to talk about accountability requirements. Carrie, this is still my section, right? Sorry, folks, my first time.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Vicki. Okay, these are some important financial and administrative requirements for these matching grants. First is the matching funds requirement. Every state dollar for a job skills grant must be matched with $1 from the private sector. The match is really flexible. It can include cash, employee wages, and benefits that are paid during their participation in training activities, or other eligible forms of support that are provided in the program guidelines. The goal here is to ensure that a shared investment between the state and the business partner is taking place. Second, expenditure accounting. Each job skill project must be tracked in a separate account. Have a conversation with your business office if you haven't already once you start a grant. This includes both the state funds and any cash match that's provided by your business partner. Keep everything in a dedicated account. This helps maintain transparency and simplifies reporting and auditing. Finally, about invoicing. Educational institutions involved in the training must invoice the state board using the online budget and invoicing system, or OBIS. And this is the official platform that we use for processing reimbursements and managing project budgets. Okay, a little bit more about accountability requirements. We're going to talk about student and course reporting requirements. All courses that are offered under a job skills program grant must be set up in CTC Link each quarter. This is assuming that you're the grantee is a community or technical college. This includes assigning a class number, subject, and catalog number. It's important to note that only job skills program trainees can be enrolled in these designated course sections. In other words, these are not open enrollment courses. These are dedicated for the business customers that you are partnered with. Proper setup in CTC Link ensures accurate tracking, reporting, and compliance. A link to the full coding and reporting guidelines can be found in slide 28. These slides will also be on the Job Skills Grant website a little bit later today. Next, let's talk about subcontracts. If your project includes subcontractors, for example, you're contracting out a couple of courses to be taught by a contracted instructor. These contracts must be fully executed before any paid work begins. If your project, and if a potential subcontractor is responsible for delivering a significant portion of the training in your grant, your educational institution must outline the specific steps that you'll take to ensure that the state's investment benefits both your college and the industry. This is about accountability and making sure that the impact of funding is maximized. When the legislature established this program over 40 years ago, their vision and intent was to create a program that's mutually beneficial among employers and their employees and higher education and training institutions. Okay, a little bit more about accountability. We're going to wrap up with two final administrative requirements: records retention and the final report. First, records retention requirement: the educational institution must maintain detailed records for every job skills project. This includes documentation on trainees, curriculum, financials, course information, time and effort reporting, and any external audits conducted. These records are essential for ensuring accountability and must be kept organized and accessible in case of a review or audit. Next is the final report. All job skills projects are required to submit a final report. For grants that end on June 30th, 2026, the deadline to submit your final report will be July 10th of 2026. This report helps document the outcomes of your project and ensures that the goals of the grant were met. They're also absolutely essential in our staff delivering a report to the legislature about the program every year, another requirement that the legislature set in statute for us. Okay. All right, let's talk about the timeline. So proposals this year are due on May 8th, 2025 at 11:55 p.m. Staff are available to provide you assistance until 4 o'clock in the afternoon that day. We strongly encourage you to not wait until the last minute in case you run into any issues. At this moment, I'm going to share a common, not a totally common issue, but an issue that usually happens to one person about once a year with this application, and that is that they've been working on the application in OGMS. They have permission to write the application. However, somehow they did not get the permission set to submit the application, to hit the submit button when they're ready to release it to the state board. So make sure you have your permissions set up with your security person and that you're working a little ahead of that deadline. The review and approval process runs from May 13th through the 29th. And that's the period where we're reviewing. We will be in communication with you in case that there are any questions or revisions necessary. And then your funding will begin July 1st, 2025. Any revisions to your budget must be completed before June 15th of 2026. We would strongly prefer it much earlier. And looking ahead, there are a couple of key deadlines to keep in mind. First, that June 15th, 2026 budget modification deadline, and final invoice cutoff date, July 15th. And so, in fact, it's always helpful if your final report due July 10th and your invoice timing could even be closer together around July 10th, but July 15th is the deadline. Provided that we have funding available, there will be 3 rounds of opportunities to apply for job skills grants. Please monitor our website, our job skills grant program webpage, to see if there are additional funding rounds available. Okay, I mentioned at the beginning, I'll mention it again. We want to let you know that we'll be posting a Q&A document to our webpage to help you address questions that come up throughout the application process. If you ask a question today, we'll make sure it include a written response in that document. We update it regularly with the most recent questions at the top, usually, so they're easy to find. And so remember to keep checking back on our webpage for the most up-to-date Q&A. And I want to assure you, if one college asks a question about the job skills program, we generalize that question and add it to the FAQ so that all of the other potential applicants can benefit from the information. And I'm going to go ahead and jump to I guess here on this slide are some examples of frequently asked questions. I'm going to jump ahead to resources and then check with our team to see what I might have missed and if we have any questions pop it up in the Q&A.
We didn't have any question, Carolyn.
Okay. Thanks, Vicki. You are welcome to send questions to myself, Carolyn McKinnon. My contact information is included on this slide and is also on our website. We request that you give us some feedback. At the end of this webinar, there will be a screen that pops up in your browser and asks just a couple of basic questions. And we really value your feedback. Thank you. As I said, keep those questions coming. We will be responding in writing regularly, and we're very grateful for your time and interest in this program. Vicki and Carrie, any last words?
Well, just a reminder to visit the webpage later today, so you'll have a copy of this recording as well as the slideshow presentation itself and the Q&A document from questions we've gathered since we opened the application last I'm sorry, I don't have the date.
That's
And then
Thursday.
Thank you. And then starting next week, you'll also provide a frequently asked question document, and this will house all the questions we have gathered from previous fiscal years. But that said, however, you're still welcome to email Caroline and me about your specific situation.
And if you have any issues with OGMS with applying, please reach out to me. I'm here to help.
Okay, team, thank you very much, and this will conclude the webinar.